Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's an interview with Mr. Max Basheer for Open House. Max, thank you very, very much for your time.
My pleasure, Greg.
I do know you're a busy man. Now, Max, you've had a really interesting life, both in the football world and the law world. Can we start with the footy world?
Certainly, yeah.
The SA Commission, very, very interesting times, right back in the 70s through to not too many years ago when you bailed off it. But what was probably some of your most exciting times? What were the things when you look back on your time you go, hey, that was great?
I suppose one of the most important decisions that was made in the late 70s was to leave Adelaide Oval and establish our headquarters at West Lakes. We didn't have any money and we didn't have anywhere to go. We looked at many suitable sites, none of which were available in the end until we found the site at West Lakes, and being involved with that as chairman of the steering committee and seeing it come alive was a very exciting period.
Max, did you have the full support of the community in those days, or the SANFL clubs, or how did that all go?
Neither. The community were very much against us. The Cricket Association was very much against us, and 7 of the 10 league clubs were opposed to our move.
Fantastic. You would have felt like Mr. Popularity in those days.
Exactly right, Greg.
Yeah, so as you look back now and we're heading back to Adelaide Oval, what's your thoughts?
Well, it's not for me to get involved with that part of the situation. I don't know enough of the detail of it, Greg, except to say that we started from nothing at West Lakes, and we finished up being the owner of 57 acres of land, which with a very fine stadium on it, and I just hope that if a move is made, it'll be for the betterment of the game in general. Very
well spoken. So what you are saying is real estate's been a very sound investment made by yourself and the other authorities.
I always took the view that we must be the master of our own destiny, and in order to do that, we should purchase the freehold, which we did in a series of different transactions. And I think at one stage, and probably now, we're the only football body in Australia that owns its own freehold headquarters.
Yeah, fantastic. And the way things are going, and money's become a little bit tighter in the entertainment game, it's going to be a very, very worthwhile thing that you've done. Just the licences to the AFL, Max, your thoughts or memories back then?
Yeah, that was a very tough period, 1990 to the end of 91. We'd been negotiating with the AFL over a period of 18 months or so, and getting nowhere, and in the end it was forced on us that we had to join in the end, and it was a question of negotiating to getting the best deal we could, and it turned out all right in the end that we got that first licence. It was a South Australian team, combined team, and we got some terms which had not been available to the previous people that had joined, and we were quite satisfied with that.
You'd have to be satisfied with the whole thing. So Lee and yourself, obviously Billy Sanders would have had a huge hand in it.
That's right. Yeah.
The team was fairly successful from day one.
I think it was, Greg, because it was a completely new world for us all, and I think we can look back and say it was successful. And Lee was with me all the way through, because he and I were together for 19 years until I left in 2003. But it was a pretty difficult time, but in the end it was well worthwhile.
1997 and 98 would have made whatever happened in the past worthwhile, I'm assuming.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was a pleasure to be in the VIP room at the MCG.
Could not take the smile off yours and Lee's faces for about 3 weeks after that.
I tried to be humble in victory, and I failed miserably.
The expansion of the AFL, so knowing how tight things can be in football clubs and in fact, the environment, what's your view on heading to Gold Coast 2011 and the Greater Western Sydney in 2012?
Well, Greg, I suppose I'm a very conservative person, but I go back to the days of 1985 when all of the VFL clubs were going down the the drain, and so was the VFL. They formed an independent committee in Melbourne, comprising of people from Victoria, to see where football was going and what they could do to arrest the slide. And one of the things was that they should encourage teams from South Australia and Western Australia so they could get their markets to help them on the financial side, but that there should be a maximum of 12 teams in the AFL competition, 6 out of Melbourne, 2 out of Adelaide, 2 out of Perth, 1 out of Sydney and 1 out of Brisbane. And that was a pretty ambitious thought, but then it was thought that Australia was not big enough to service more than 12 teams. To go to 18, well, I suppose the powers that be know much more about it than I do, but I really don't think that there are enough class players to fill 18 teams in that competition, because when you think about it, the Victorian League and now the AFL have always modelled themselves on the American college system, the drafting and all of those things that happen, and the only difference is that there are 300 million people in America and 20-odd million here.
Exactly. Yeah, look, just picking up on that point, it's going to be a real shame to the game if the standard of play drops because of the expansion. So don't worry about the money, take all that aside, but just the actual standard of our game.
Yeah. I think that there's more emphasis on the money side of it than on the game itself these days, and television and the money from television seems to play a very important part in the future of the game here, and I think that's a pretty sad situation.
Couldn't agree more. It's really interesting. We're going to touch on it with Gold Coast grabbing Gary Ablett at $9.5 million for 5 years. Is it starting to take the fabric of what football clubs are about? So our local football clubs, you and I played for the Guernsey. These days it's definitely a job and a business, isn't it?
Most certainly. The word loyalty no longer exists so far as players are concerned, and I suppose they've got a limited span of their life to make the money, but the thing that has always worried me as to whether the way the game is going, the game will be able to afford to pay these huge sums of money, as I say, with the population that we have and with the demand for the entertainment dollar these days. That seems a lot of money, and I'm amazed how they can always seem to fit under the salary cap that they have. But I don't know enough about that to know.
Can I ask you, you are seen as, and rightly so, a leading administrator in football and obviously a leading light in the law firm as well. Did you have a mentor ever? Did you actually look up to somebody else either in your work life or in your football life?
Not really. I obviously followed football when I was at college and at university where I played. There was one player that I really respected and loved watching, and it was a fellow named Bob Quinn from Port Adelaide. He was a Magarey medalist, went to the war, won a military medal, came back from the war and won a Magarey medal. And he was captain of South Australia, and he was a marvellous player. And I always loved watching him, and he was a real idol of mine.
Fantastic. Max, just getting back to your very famous law firm, Duncan Basheer Hannon. We know what you're doing. What's Mr. Duncan and Mr. Hannon up to?
Well, Peter Duncan, he gave up the law years ago for politics. He was in the federal political arena as well as the state. In fact, he was Attorney General here in South Australia for some time. And Peter is now overseas in retirement, as I understand it. Master Hannon, he became a judge of the industrial court, and he's a very fine man, and also I'm sure he'll be a wonderful judge.
And just to finish with, a man as busy as you, I'm sure you've got some interests outside football and work. What do you enjoy doing in your downtime?
I love being involved with the family, with my 2 daughters and my granddaughters, 2 of them. I do a lot of reading. I have a fairly large circle of friends who it's always good to be with. And I have a real interest in horse racing, which I've had all my life. I raced a few horses with varying degrees of success.
Long as you've had the odd winner. Max, thank you very much for your time. Before we go though, it's just a real interest to me as we're waiting in the foyer here for you. The young lady said that how much she loves Max. We were able to respond, I don't know anybody that doesn't. So what you have done for South Australia, mate, is absolutely fantastic, and thank you very much for your time here today.
I think you're very generous in your comments, Greg. Thank you.
Good on you, mate.